Funding for Off-90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Coming up on this episode of Off-90, meet some people from southern Minnesota who think those mysterious things that go bump in the night just might be what you think and fear they are. A lot goes into creating the perfect paperweight. Come with us to Winona to learn the difficult process of making glass paperweights. Meet a man from Rochester who combined music and video for some groundbreaking results. It's all just ahead, Off-90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off-90. Have you ever seen a murky apparition, heard any mysterious noises, or just had an eerie feeling for seemingly no reason? Some people might tell you that those are the telltale signs of ghosts. We met with Christopher Larson, author of the book Ghosts of Southeastern Minnesota, to talk about this phenomenon. Also, we went with a group of ghost hunters to Sweets Hotel in Leroy during one of their investigations of the paranormal.
The owner of the bar told me about the spooky things that might happen when working late at night. What he didn't tell me was how terrifying it was to meet a ghost, especially one who is angry at loud music. I am Chris Larson, and I'm an author of several paranormal books around southeastern Minnesota. I got interested with the paranormal back in the early days, back in elementary school, and read as many books as I could about the ghosts and monsters and things, and really just got excited about the unknown, the paranormal, and what it was all about. In the research I did for the current books out there, most of them tended to be dry and just facts, factual information, and so I felt there was a gap in the paranormal books. So I wanted to bring that information into something more lively, and that's where I came up with kind of a format where we put the actual events into a story that someone can read ages 8 to 80. So for Ghosts of Southeastern Minnesota, the fictional part isn't necessarily just totally fabricated. It's based on the true events that I was able to research and find out about. Paramount Theater itself was fascinating. At some point, the old classic theater kind of went on its way, and it turned into a bar, kind of nightclub environment, and that's actually when most of the paranormal experiences occurred. In my book, The Story here, I explain how it's thought that the original owner, who had passed away, is upset about all the loud music and all. I mean, it's not his beautiful theater anymore. It's a nightclub with loud rock and roll. So when the band would be playing, the sound mixer over in the back would just magically come down in volume, or sometimes not work at all. And again, no one's changing any of the recordings. A classic problem with paranormal is lights going on and off, so the marquee lights out back would be turned on in the middle of the day. No one had any recollection of turning them on. Other things, when it was, again, with a bar, there would be mixers on the bar that would go on all by themselves. George is supposedly here haunting the place, but now, since it's not a bar, restaurant, or a bar nightclub, it may be that he's resting peacefully now. It seems to me everyone has a ghost story or some kind of paranormal experience. It's the power of the unknown. They're just, everyone gets kind of caught up in the mundane world and just the day-to-day lives. They're excited about the unknown or the mystery. And ghosts, again, tend to be kind of close to each other, to everyone. The common theory is that they're still stuck kind of in limbo and they have something to say. They need to tell you something. In some cases it's warning you, but in most cases it's just wants to communicate with you. They're not ready to move on. Great music, I said to the lead singer of the band while they were on break. I like all the classic rock tunes. He nodded as he chugged a glass of water. But I'm not sure about the song where you wore those masks. The guy you had up on the balcony was too creepy. Several people were very upset. And I thought I told you nobody is allowed up in the balconies. The singer stared at me, confused. Finally he said, "Man, we didn't have anybody up there." For me, I kind of think, again, there's just simply this level of energy that's out there, and it just kind of transcends into our world now and again with the right catalyst. This is a kind of a brave new world where there's investigators that are trying to figure out from a scientific perspective what's actually happening.
I just heard Frank in response on the ghost box to you. Right after you said Frank, it said Frank.
That's what he did last time. Frank, do you remember us being here? No, you touched Jen last time when she sat there.
I'm Najani Demmer and I'm a paranormal investigator.
I'm Lacey Wagner, paranormal investigator.
We started f.l.i.p.s in 2009, and f.l.i.p.s is the female lead investigative paranormal society of Minnesota.
The paramount is what we call a residual haunting or an imprint haunting. If there is a lot of activity in an imprinted or residual haunting, it can feel like an active haunting. What happened there, incidents or events, are kind of stuck there.
They're not intellectual hauntings where we can ask them questions, they can, communicate with us. It's just there. I just heard Frank in response again on the ghost box right after I asked if Frank was here.
Frank, are you saying your name, or is somebody saying your name? Frank, you're saying your name?
Well, we are at Sweets Hotel in Leroy, and this is our second time here. Our first time here was kind of a groundbreaking experience for all of us because we had had previous investigations, but this one just kind of really brought us all together, and we experienced a lot of things here as a team.
Cold spots, some EMF spikes.
People get touched, mists. We've caught some pretty compelling mists upstairs.
Generally, this is some of the equipment that we use on a regular basis. We've got a couple of digital voice recorders here. These just record general sounds and voices in the area. Sometimes we can pick up EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon.
Both me and another investigator were in this room different times. And I was sitting in a little chair in there by myself, communicating, had my digital recorder set up. And I just felt like I was touched, like on my shoulder, just like a comforting, not like painful, but like a comforting touch. And obviously if there's nobody in the room, how are you gonna be touched?
The flashlight conversation is one of our biggest forms of communication. And basically what it is just a regular Maglite flashlight. And you turn the head of it so it's just not even on. And the whole idea behind the flashlight conversation is that since a spirit is pure energy, if they touch that flashlight, they'll be able to transfer their energy into the flashlight enough to turn it on.
Are they too noisy for you? If they are, turn your light on and we'll tell them to be quiet. Turn the light on if you want them. You do. All right, I'll go take care of that for you.
Turn off in response to direct questions.
There it goes.
See, she just asked her to turn it off.
Can you turn it on if you want Jen to sing and dance?
We both had experiences as children growing up, and we've always kind of just had a feeling that there is definitely something there. Basically, our main goal is to help people understand the paranormal. And when we do collect evidence, we try to debunk as many things as possible to try to rule out, the naysayers. We ask questions because really we are here to try to help the spirits as much as the people that are still living. You know, everybody's got a story, whether in life or death, and sometimes spirits can't move on until they tell their story. You know, kind of like a closure type deal. And a lot of the people that don't believe in the paranormal are people that are afraid of it and don't really understand it. And that's kind of why we're here, is to help people understand it. And it's not always something to be afraid of. You know, embrace it.
A paperweight can be something more than a way to just keep your papers from blowing away. It can also be a sculpture encapsulated in glass. We visited Kathy Richardson, who has a glass-blowing studio in Winona. Kathy produces fine art glass paperweights for collectors and connoisseurs of sculptural glass. The process takes a lot of patience and skill, as well as a little teamwork.
I've had an interest in glass for a long time, and my mother had a very small collection of paperweights that I used to look at when I was a child. And I think I've been very fascinated by looking into things and seeing little tiny environments inside of an object. My name is Kathy Richardson, and I am a glass artist working in Winona, Minnesota. My mother was a florist and grew orchids and a lot of different types of flowers. I grew up in Virginia where there were a lot of woods, so I'm attracted to woodland, pond scenes. I was trained as a geologist. I have master's and PhD in geology, and I was technically a geochemist, which meant I studied the chemistry of rocks and minerals. The paperweight I will be making is a lampwork vacuum encased paperweight. When I make paperweights, I first work at the torch and I sculpt a lot of very tiny objects. I think the most exciting part of it is once you get enough of these small objects on the hot plate, then you can start really being creative. Take the original ideas from a variety of sources. Once I have this idea, I have to learn how to create that in glass. And I do that by taking glass rods and sculpting over a very small flame. I'm manipulating those rods into frogs, salamanders, coral, jellyfish, flowers, leaves. Those objects are then put together into a composition, and then that composition is put into a chamber, which is just a cylinder that it goes into. Then I encase that in crystal clear glass and use a process called vacuum encasing, which means that the hot glass goes down over those tiny objects and is pulled down with a vacuum. And then the paperweight is shaped and formed into a sphere. There are only a handful of people in the world that make lamp-worked vacuum encased paperweights. It takes me anywhere from 4 to 12 hours of work at the torch to make the small sculptures that go inside. And then it usually takes about an hour to an hour and a quarter to make the paperweight. It's not uncommon to have a piece of coral break, an octopus tentacle break, or a leaf or a petal fracture or crack or break. That's why I check carefully after we've done the encasing process to see whether it's been successful. Everything I do is magnified. The paperweight has a curved surface. It magnifies everything I do. So I make things that are very, very tiny, and they look a lot larger when you see them in the paperweight. That means that I have to be very careful if I make mistakes. The mistakes are magnified. So if something doesn't work, I just simply throw it away and start again. Because you do not make good art by magnifying mistakes.
Music has long been a passion for Kevin Dobie, and so has technology. Kevin has devised ways to make these two art forms interact in interesting and creative ways. Interactivity is also an important element in Kevin's work, and his installations can be found in several places around Rochester. See what happened when Kevin joined with the Rochester Symphony Orchestra and Chorale to fuse the spectacle of light, color, and sound.
Love music, and I love the combination of music with multiple medias put together, and I think the power of them combined has a tremendous potential to being a positive force in the world. I'm Kevin Dobie, and I'm a composer and media technologist. Just as a composer, what drives me is just the idea of being able to take ideas that I have and being able to literally put them down on paper and then have them realized and then have people respond to it. Turning Points was the name of the concert as named by Maestro Jerry Lance, and the concept from him for the concert was that there were times in historical aspects of the orchestra that different pieces of music perhaps had some influence on new directions in the traditional orchestral genre. And the idea for this particular piece, which was called Color and Light, was to incorporate new medias into a traditional orchestral setting. So the organization that was involved in this was the Rochester Symphony Orchestra and Chorale. Maestro Lance knew of my work as a composer, but he also was aware of my work as an interactive visual artist. And we talked about the idea of potentially incorporating those two together. So that's really where Color and Light came from, is the idea of merging traditional music compositions for orchestra and choir with some contemporary new tools. Oddly enough, my favorite part of the experience really was not the performance. Although I loved the performance, to me, the experience for me that will stay with me more than that was the actual creation of the piece, because it took place over months and months and months. And I was very fortunate that I was on a sabbatical, teaching sabbatical for a year. And during that year, I was able to really be quite intense with the process of the music composition. And so it's really the ritual of making coffee, coming down, saying, okay, for the next 8 hours, I'm going to write music. And to be able to have the luxury of being able to be intensely focused on a project like that, something that might take in a second and a half to unfold in real time might take 8 to 10 hours to create. The software that I created for this project is entitled Symphonic Vision. And the idea of Symphonic Vision is it's a way to unify multiple medias under the control of a musician reading traditional notation, so that when they play a particular key on a keyboard, that a particular visualization can happen, or a particular set of light cues can be controlled, or camera projections can be controlled. The idea of Symphonic Vision is to allow visualization of music to occur on the part of the audience. So the idea of Symphonic Vision is to allow perhaps people who may not necessarily want to go to a classical music concert another means by which to understand it, and maybe perhaps interest level, particularly people who are, in that 15 to 25-year-old category, are not a typical classical music kind of concert goer. My hopes are that eventually people of that age category might consider coming to a classical music concert because they're drawn to the music, but that another part of visualization will perhaps allow them to understand and enjoy the music at another level. So I just wanted to be, exactly. The week leading up to the concert was intense.
It's going to be an adventure.
That's interesting. I'm very calm.
Well, yeah. There's nothing you can do about it.
All the dotted I's and all that sort of stuff, crossed T's as they say, were all in place. I knew technically what had to be done, but we had just a few days to put all of the equipment into place, get it set up, make sure it was functioning, and then get the orchestra to get in there and rehearse with it only twice before the concert, and then to make sure that the technology was operating as smoothly as possible, so it became an enhancement and not something that became a deterrent in the outcome of the project. My God, how does that work? And that was intense.
You wrote a piece that once you understand how it works and all that, it's still hard to do, but it makes sense.
Civic Center was great to allow me to work there till wee hours of the morning a number of times. Oh, indeed, I have sustenance. I have Mountain Dew. I heard mostly really reactions of interest. People thought it was very fascinating and interesting. People were moved by some of the musical events, which made me, again, feel very good, because ultimately the whole purpose of writing music and or using visualizations are to create some sort of emotion response from people who see and hear it. Fortunate to be able to be in a position where I can write pieces of music and then actually have other ensembles, individuals be interested in the music. Even if I didn't have people bring it to life, I would probably still write music because it's something that, it's an expression that just makes me more human.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time, Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.